In 2023, there was a Twitter post that feels almost prophetic. 2023 will be the last time we ever got to experience a semantically lossless internet. From now on, we face a creeping tide of machine hallucinations, collapsing all human knowledge toward common patterns like a gradually oncoming digital Mandela effect. And now it's the end of 2024 as I'm writing this, and that time is over. It's the end of the year where the old internet that I knew and loved officially died, replaced by a dead, artificial and hollow version of its previous self. This isn't all new. In fact, this has been a talking point and growing concern for quite some time. The general concept, starting out on forums like 4chan, quickly grew into a well-put suspicion and later realization all across the web that a lot of what we see online isn't organic or even real. The theory supposed that bots generate most online interactions, from social media posts to comment sections to even the people that we may be replying to or replying to us, with the most striking realization being, as bots infest more and more of the internet and potentially overtake real users in numbers, people no longer shape the direction of the internet, it's the algorithm and the bots. Over time, it became obvious that the dead internet theory was not just a theory, it was an accurate prediction and is now a lived reality. That almost seems so obvious and visible, it's now utterly non-contentious. We are in year one of the truly dead internet. It is not uncommon to see posts fully AI where people will pass it off as if it isn't, to see full profiles filled with pictures, memories, ideas that are completely fake or borrowed, entire comment sections of bots replying to one another. Sure, in the 2010s there were scammer bots trying to get you to click a link, but it was almost always an automated message in your spam folder, and was the social media equivalent to a scammer calling saying a wealthy Nigerian prince needs to transfer some money. If you had any knowledge on conning, you could just see it for what it was. This is different. The worst development so far on a personal level is the sinking feeling when you can't tell whether something is AI, which has already begun to happen, questioning whether real people are fake people are real, questioning your own judgment. And this isn't cherry-picked examples, it's cropping up everywhere. Yes, its amount depends on the website. Twitter is definitely the worst so far, but everywhere is getting infected with this. It's not just site-specific, or even medium-specific. Music, commercials, gaming, movies. It's being normalized everywhere. I already envy when I didn't have to squint at almost every picture I see to check for any detail that looks out of place. Not to mention on YouTube, while the problem is better aesthetically apart from thumbnails, AI has managed to seep into it in a unique way. Maybe when you're watching a video, it's a real person speaking, but their script is AI. Maybe it's a real person, but they're using an AI filter. Maybe it's a real script, but a fake voice. It's less obvious, but in so many YouTube videos, there are elements and traces of AI in it, that over time as a user, builds to this general feeling of hollow detachment. And usually you could go to the comment section or replies, but again, it's a dead internet. None a majority by any means, but so many posts and videos have comment sections that have no real human personality or human insight to them. They're either generic things that don't apply to anything specific to the video that could apply to literally anything, or some throwaway catchphrase or meme of the week. It's not that they're all bots, it's that the interactions have become indistinguishable from the bots. YouTube also got rid of dislikes, so that inherent visual indication of whether something or someone is reputable is gone. Sure, there is plugins to put it back, but while nice, they're almost always inaccurate. Overall, since around 2022 as a user, there has been this massive dissonance I felt from the entire site. When I was younger, I was pissed off about internet history and the fact that there wasn't ever an easy to follow timeline for all of this. The fact that the most important changes never really got highlighted. Over the past year, seeing humanity's greatest tool, communication, being usurped by one of its own creations, and the commentary being so lacking in depth, and the implications for what this means for our future being whisked away as topic summarizations or surface level analysis, I wish I was surprised, but I'm not. Commentary has always and continues to be mostly about random internet personalities fucking up or doing something silly, or more recently niche microtrends or observations. And I'm not saying that doesn't have a place, but I feel the depth of commentary really hasn't matured, along with the internet becoming more important in our daily lives than ever. The editing has gotten really good, but I genuinely believe the writing has mostly gotten way worse. People just add dramatic music while recapping bullet points they saw off Wikipedia or Twitter and treating every situation or topic like a police report devoid of personality, charm, or memorabilia. I'd call it intellectual white noise, but at least white noise has a purpose and use. I would bet money that most of the viewers watching the video as they're making a sandwich or cleaning or something similar have 10 times more depth in their thoughts than the creators of these types of videos, because they're actually thinking about the information and the implications of it, rather than simply summarizing summarizing and rushing to summarize like most of these videos are. And the sad reality is that people really should think of the deeper implications of all these small changes and start keeping a timeline every year of the overarching, broad, massive changes. The small algorithmic shifts, the way people are talking, and the landscape. If they did keep this timeline, they'd realize, quite frankly, the reason sites like YouTube feel so hollow isn't just because of AI, it's because most of the creators speak in a hollow way. It's in their language. I've talked about it before, but similarly to how there was a trend to stop swearing from 2017 to 2020, 2020 to now has been replacing language as well as avoiding it. AI infecting these sites wouldn't feel so bad if the real users and creators felt just as human as they did previously. But because they're sterilizing their language and limiting their expression purposely for the most outreach, they don't feel so different from the AI chatbots that are lacking in emotive qualities. This timeline reflects the sort of change in identity that creators had from the 2010s to now. We went from YouTuber to influencer to content creator. These are distinct eras with distinct features, and this shift happened in about 10 years. YouTubers were the most relatable, and well, to put it simply, they just made videos and people liked them. Sometimes they would try and branch out and try bigger things, but mostly it was just to showcase something of theirs, be it their life or creations. Mostly the initiative, motivation, and drive was just to make something cool, funny, or interesting while expressing yourself in an authentic way. Money wasn't even there at the start, it was just creation for creation's sake. Influencers utilized the connection viewers had with them to build a brand and support brands. They dropped the moniker of YouTuber because they utilized multiple social media apps. Influencers often work directly with brands to market products, driving the rise of influencer marketing, which is now one of the most popular forms of advertising in the youth demographic. Influencers often built their persona around a lifestyle or aesthetic. They became aspirational figures, showcasing ideal lives for their audiences to emulate. Still, although it was more corporate, the focus was on the creator. Content creators make their video for the algorithm rather than their audience, or in some cases even themselves. Take TikTok shorts and reels for example. You can watch 200 shorts or TikToks in a row and you likely won't remember the people you just watched, and in a lot of cases you won't even remember the videos or the person either. It's just about engagement rather than impact. The people don't really leave an impact and the videos don't try to either. Take the trend of visiting like 100 different restaurants, or we tried every X, or we tried every Y. We tried a $1 house and then we tried a $1 million house. Why would you do that? Why would anyone do that? Well, you wouldn't. Who wakes up and is like, I'm going to travel the country and visit every one of these restaurants. I'm going to see what a $1 ice cream is like, and then I'm going to see what a $1,000 ice cream is like. You don't. You just know it's something people would find mildly interesting, so you make it for that interest. You make videos for audience interest, and rather than users liking the creator, the algorithm likes the creator because the creator accommodates it by catering to said interest. MatPat actually talked about this before he retired.
YouTube is an active watch experience. Viewers are constantly choosing what to watch. And to be honest, it's actually a lot of work on you guys. Now compare that to TikTok. What do you do on TikTok? You open the app. That's it. For the vast majority of people, the activity actually stops there. The most you gotta do from that point is a little thumb flick when you want to move on to the next video. A video that the TikTok algorithm has pre-selected for you. This is a passive watch experience. When we like TikToks, we tell people, I have to show you this TikTok. Or, have you seen that one TikTok where the guy does the thing? We're not trying to de-identify the people as creators. Instead, the way the platform works takes creators out of the equation. It doesn't really matter who made the TikTok. I didn't choose it. It was over pretty fast, and for better or worse, the platform pushed me on to the next video. If I truly wanted to see who made it, well, it's available. It's just teeny tiny over here, right down in the corner.
This isn't how people talk, this isn't how people act. The YouTube I grew up with were just regular people who happen to get lucky or have an interesting enough personality to garner interest. It is literally just a formula now, and that's why all my criticisms are vague and imprecise on who I'm specifically talking about, because they could apply to literally so many creators. It's hard to criticize them meaningfully when they don't really present themselves meaningfully. Their content is impersonable, and thus my criticism is impersonable. There was always an insecurity in the mid-2010s corporate videos that YouTube dropped about not being prestigious when compared to other mediums. YouTube always wanted to be taken more seriously in that era especially. That's why they started pushing celebrities like Will Smith, The Rock, and the late night hosts. It's also, as well as having another revenue stream, why they pushed YouTube Originals and YouTube Premium so much. They didn't just want to compete with Netflix, they wanted to be treated like Netflix, achieving a perception of high-quality, prestigious media, or essentially becoming TV. And I've never gotten that mentality ever. YouTube was so much more than TV. It was culture actually in the hands of the people. What the people did with it varied, to be sure, but there was no other place that the masses could go and see regular vulgarity and unfiltered moments free of studio interference. To be honest, I never felt like people spoke like I do in TV and movies. It's people imitating what they think conversations sound like so that they can move the plot along. And that's why when it does come across as natural, it's so revered in scriptwriting and acting. The only medium I actually felt widely captured the authentic experience of the everyman was the one led by the everyman. It didn't follow familiar patterns and predictable genres, and predictable conversations weren't here because you didn't have to present anything specifically except yourself. As long as you weren't doing anything abhorrent or illegal, you could make whatever you wanted, and if you were talented enough, you could get a following. Seeing people take that creative breath of fresh air and turn it back into TV, not necessarily because of YouTube itself, but because of the creators, makes me wonder if creativity in a medium will always inevitably become a formula. YouTube's advantage over every other medium was that it had no expectations for creativity, and didn't have to abide by the professionalism of actual TV networks. You could listen to some person you've never met go on a schizo-adjacent ramble about their daily life while they play Club Penguin. You could watch a reenactment of Toy Story 3 done with real toys by some kid who just loved the movie. You could watch whatever Salad Fingers was. And you could watch genuinely interesting, well-made original content that could be TV level in editing, writing, and quality. But even in those cases, it always had a more indie, grounded, and homely type of production. It should have been and once was the best place for creativity for the masses ever. Genuinely in its prime, among other websites, there were constantly new, exciting, fresh, and original things being made every month, and it felt like its own culture, distinct from other websites and other mediums. And this isn't just me getting older, reminiscing and romanticizing the past, it just was not like this when I was younger. That's why the jump earlier YouTubers tried with going to TV never worked. Their style always was more suited for the at-home approach. When they jumped ship, it came across as trying to be something you're not, and I think there's a reason MrBeast doesn't have that same problem with his TV show, and that jump won't be as jarring as other people who have tried in the past. It's because his content virtually is TV. It's just what he was doing on YouTube, except now with a much bigger budget. I'm old enough now to remember when the attitude around fakeness and personality was like a dirty word. Believe it or not, in the mid to early 2010s, you were seen as a sellout if you did a sponsorship in a YouTube video. Just one sponsorship for money promoting a product. I'm not saying that we should return to this, or that anyone doing it should be seen as a sellout by any means, but I'm trying to highlight how dramatic a shift we came to in about 10 years. Creativity by committee was the dirty word insult in the 90s when Nirvana and punk rock acts like them were complaining about phonies, posers, and people who'd act inauthentically for mass appeal. Now it's more so creativity by algorithm, where you, as an individual, subtract everything about yourself as an individual into something commercial for other people. It's the same process, but a lot sadder, because it's not the man or the system or some manager forcing you to conform, it's yourself, because you just know you'll be more successful this way. Thus, artists and creators now self-censor and adapt their work to whatever the algorithm rewards. Influencers and content creators also cross-pollinate a lot more than they did in the 2010s. If it's not talking about the drama of the week, it's constantly collabing, showing up in each other's streams and videos, and reacting to what someone else did. Hilariously, often reacting to someone else's reaction, so it's just a never-ending, disjointed conversation of millionaires giving 1-minute takes that get re-uploaded somewhere. Watching creative and talented people slowly become the equivalent to Dora the Explorer, except these people are actually worse because at least Dora waits for you to figure it out for yourself. These people spoon-feed their audience with unmediated or thought-out reactions and opinions they could just have for themselves. It's a circle jerk of artistic and intellectual laziness that profits off of people too insecure to think for themselves. And it's not just the fact that these people get paid in a month what some people won't make in a year, doing something that everyone does in their spare time. It's that these speakers suck at speaking fundamentally. They took brevity as the soul of wit and turned it into yapping as the soul of shit. They waffle on, recapping needlessly about things almost anyone interested in the topic already knows so that they can squeeze out as much revenue as they possibly can, giving milquetoast safe edgy little comments every now and then so it's not blatant plagiarism off of articles and social media, like a person paraphrasing an essay a day before it's due, or in this case, before the topic loses relevance. This has happened so much that hilariously there are now channels dedicated to summarizing summarizations. What the fuck happened to culture? How did we get here? How do we go back? How can we go forward? This isn't the worst part of it though. If it's not with other content creators, they use their own audience for content, not in the way of collaborating as a community to make something that would actually be interesting. They quite literally just react to what their audience sends in on a fucking Reddit or something, repeating the same inside jokes over and over again. Their audience literally does their labor for them and they just react to their work. What the fuck is this website now? Once again, I think in most cases the viewers are genuinely way more talented, funny and creative than the people they watch, hence why they use them so much. Here's the big problem and impact of having a culture that has literally no impact. Nothing. Our conversations mean nothing. Our communication means nothing. My critiques mean nothing because I don't decide the fate of the internet. You don't decide the fate of the internet. Our conversations don't decide. Our content doesn't. The commentary doesn't. There's no choice here or meaningful discussion. The impact of the users of the internet to the internet is kind of null and void at this point. It's a consumption-oriented environment where user influence is actually completely diminished. And you can't boycott at all. Creators can't jump ship because they're monetarily tied to the platform. Audiences want to watch creators, so no one leaves. When people do leave or people do create their own platforms, it's usually for political or social reasons rather than an actual movement against the platforms themselves. Think Blue Sky ever since Elon bought Twitter, or Rumble with controversial influences. So what happens is creators just bend the knee to the algorithm begrudgingly and try their luck at making their content liked by the algorithm, and because everyone's trying to do the same appeasement, the content generally comes off as samey, impersonable, and interchangeable in language, subject area, and focus. In the end, I don't actually think it was the influx of AI that caused this generally hollow feeling, it was our own language. Moving on to where it was AI. Now, Twitter probably isn't the future of what online interaction looks like. It's a very overdramatic example that completely proves my point, but feels like an egregious outlier in doing so. So I'm not going to say that Twitter is at all representative of what the internet at large is like, because that would be disingenuous of me. It's its own beast. It's a very, very strange website around the end of 2024 as I'm writing this, and more of a case study. I don't know anyone in my actual life who uses Twitter or X besides occasional scrolling. If I'm being honest, I don't use Twitter or X myself. I never post, I study it for psychological evaluation and observation, and have for years previously. When doing said studying, I would describe Twitter from 2016 to 2022 as akin to going to hell in Doom, a relentless combative atmosphere of pain and agony, arguing and trying to get the moral high ground. It was funny sometimes, crazy at others, even more crazier at others, a lot of trolling, a lot of textual yelling, a lot of the strangest human behavior I've ever been witness to. It was utter toxicity, probably terrible for culture and ourselves, and has done seemingly irreparable harm to how people discuss issues amongst themselves. The one thing it had going for it, besides being funny sometimes, was that it was the only real website where you could see a random ass person criticize a media figure, celebrity, and politician, and have everyone be on the same playing field about criticizing each other. Social hierarchy didn't matter, it was just how well you could trash talk. I mean this with sincerity when I say it was strangely one of the best meritocracies ever employed digitally, just for shit talking. Because you could be a brand new account, never posted before, and make fun of the elite and celebrities in the public square, and you could get notoriety. Despite my dislike for the platform, that is and was unique. And all of that is gone and has been replaced with a pay-to-win scheme that has no winning, only boosting. I want to say before I lambaste him that I was genuinely open-minded when Elon bought Twitter, and I was curious to see what he would do. I even liked some of what he said before buying. One of Elon's early criticisms of Twitter was the prevalence of bots and fake accounts. He promised to combat this issue, focusing on verifying real human users to make the platform more authentic and engaging. It's funny he said this considering the current state of it. He also decided to poll users on policy changes, allowing the users to actually decide the fate of the platform. I think every platform should do this, a completely user-driven voting system that prioritizes the people. Really, he was going to fix prominent issues that contribute to the artificial dead feeling that I'm complaining about in this video. And in time, every single one of those things was either a lie or stopped happening very quickly. Since stepping down as CEO due to the results from one of these said polls, the polls have essentially stopped happening, and now, like every other website, new changes are just announced rather than voted on. The decision making on Twitter or X has been a consistent dumpster fire financially and for the user base. The site has been estimated to have lost 90% of its value, and the users pretty much unanimously hate every new change being made because they're always so unnecessary. For example, they changed how the block feature works. Previously, when you blocked someone, they couldn't message you, read your posts, and when they would try and view your account, they would see this screen. In October of 2024, they announced that if your posts are set to public, accounts you have blocked will be able to view them, but they will not be able to engage, like, reply, post, etc. So now it blocks communication, but you're still visible, meaning someone could just screenshot what you've posted and upload it themselves, essentially like a repost, making the block kind of redundant as they can still see your profile, they can still find out information about you, and you're not really blocked, more like restricted. There is a good counterpoint to this criticism and outrage, which is that, unless they're using a private account, no one's really blocked. Anyone previously could just use an alternate account or open their page in an incognito mode browser to then bypass being blocked, which is true. But why make it easier? Why make this change at all? It's just unnecessary, a bad move, bad for PR, and unwanted. Who is begging for this feature? Who does this benefit? This feature is kind of emblematic of this era of the website. It was supposed to be user-orientated, but most of the users despise this decision and goes against what they want. He constantly proclaims Vox Populi, Vox D, but he left the core user base feeling unheard, unappreciated, and they don't have a voice because they took it away. They didn't poll it because users would have unanimously said no. Even people that usually love the new Twitter had to admit this was a mess up. As a user, watching Twitter post Elon buying it feels like studying I don't know, there's nothing I've ever encountered like this website in its current era. I implore you to make a throwaway account and look at the reply section to the most popular posts, especially Elon's. You can delete it afterwards and probably will. You will see things you have never seen before. Speaking of the name change, I never liked the name Twitter. It always sounded to me like a shovelware mobile game, so I was happy for a name change, until I saw the name change. Now I have to explain I'm not sending them a link to an adult website. X.com is the most porn-sounding name I could think of, only rivaled by the obvious. This website is shooting itself in the foot with a rebrand that makes me never want to send a post to anyone I know. No joke, since the rebrand, I sent someone I knew a shitpost and he didn't open it because he thought it was something else. But then again, it essentially is a porn website. Under almost every popular post, regardless of context or subject matter, there is always someone advertising their OnlyFans or explicit material. There are bot accounts that will reply to any post that gets popular with either something super generic or super dirty, vaguely aligning with whatever the post is about. This is because they've utilized the blue checkmark to be at the top of the replies, boosting them up above actual normal users. Now, the blue checkmark was always badly handled by Twitter even before Elon bought it. Previous to the buy-up, it was a strange hand-picked process that almost acted as endorsements, as they would unverify controversial figures almost like a punishment. This led to a lot of backlash as a lot of controversial accounts were verified. And it seemed like some people were getting special treatment and vice versa. Panicking, Twitter then suspended the process of getting verified and re-verified the controversial figures. Then the process of getting verification was kind of locked. If you weren't a major celebrity, sports person or figure, but still had an audience or notoriety, you had to go through a lengthy, arbitrary process of seemingly irrelevant steps so that you could maybe get this one badge. There were so many people at the time who were exceedingly popular and never got verified because of this. Again, with the buyout, this could have been a brilliant opportunity and a massive PR win to fix this broken system. Instead, they changed the system entirely, making users buy verification as a subscription. Twitter already had a subscription service called Twitter Blue for users that wanted extra features. After Elon bought it, he merged the system with the verification process. Initially, this was separated into a tier system, with the subscription model, now called X Premium, showing that a user had subscribed being one tier and a legacy verified accounts being another. The problem was the badge was the same as the actual verified account, which led to confusion, and eventually they got rid of the tier system and just straight up made it so you can buy verification. You know, completely ruining the point of verification to show that you really are who you say you are. To counter the obvious stupidity of their decision, they had to then ban parody accounts that were imitating someone else, which only happened after accounts started impersonating Elon. So why did they do this? The initial goal, besides financial support, was not personal identification, but to show who were real, authentic users. As the site was so bot-infested, they wanted a way to know who the real users were. Hilariously, this was then hijacked and exploited by the bots. Most real users don't care enough about Twitter to buy a subscription, so bots use it to be boosted in the algorithm and promote their content. And because they're always promoted, they're always the ones seen first and most, leading not only to viewers getting the impression that everyone replying is a bot, but also leading bots to reply to other bots, as they get the advantage of being the most popular posts. So it's just endless conversations of bots replying to each other. If you think AI trained on social media is weird, wait until you see AI trained on AI social media. A Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox, a painting of a painting of a painting, you get my point. And also, hilariously, the verification system was supposed to get rid of the handpicked, bureaucratically controlled verification process. But Elon, as I was finishing this script, unverified Asmongold for calling out that he paid someone to play video games for him, making it completely handpicked, and also, once again, ruining the free speech absolutist narrative he pretends he upholds, and once again, showing how verification is a strange means of endorsement rather than just being verification, just like original Twitter was. If you search the phrase "ignore all previous instructions" on the search bar, you will see hundreds of posts, all similar, asking users to do a certain prompt. The users are asking this because if it is a bot they're replying to, they will do the prompt and ignore whatever the conversation is about, outing themselves as unreal. Searching this is a monolithic side scroll of bots showing their true colors and the website showing itself for what it is. Dead. The strangeness doesn't even usually need that prompt though, because it's usually just obvious. Bots will constantly reply the exact same thing to one post. They will give one-word reviews to products without any sort of personal story or personality, leading to the consensus of a good product. And even more strangely, this post is from 2011. One day, out of the blue, randomly, 11 bots replied to it, all strangely giving positive reviews of Tesla, completely out of context, for no reason. It's like a broken ghost town of snake oil salesmanship, and what I don't get is if they wanted to go with the paid supporter route, why couldn't they just have a separate badge that showed you were a paid supporter? And conversely, Why couldn't they just cut out the middleman and do what Instagram or literally any other system does with verification, which most people are fine with? It was such an easy win, and now it's just bots doing never-ending advertising and pretending to be real, giving the most off-putting, sickly feeling to the real users watching, like pause the video right now and read this post in its entirety. It is the strangest timeline we live in. They added this fucking feature where you can hide your verification mark that you paid for because they know how fucking sad it is. They know it's lame, they know it's embarrassing. Seeing this all happen in real time was an experience like no other, because I saw the timeline. I remember when he was trying to act like an arbiter of nonpartisanship, then became a central figure in Trump's political campaign. I remember when he claimed to be a free speech absolutist and then suspended journalist accounts that simply reported a doxing story. And as mentioned, I remember when he pledged to make the platform better by eliminating bots, to then not only have the platform be flooded with more bots, more than any other platform, but to give them verification. I genuinely don't know how someone could ruin a website this bad. Elon's personal Twitter is a moment in time, a monument to this era. He astroturfs any post that he agrees with, saying something like interesting, or exclamation mark, or concerning, or the monocle emoji, so it gets boosted in the algorithm. Thus, the typical feed is whatever Elon was liking that day. You know how Reddit's karma system is supposedly a democracy, but in the end just reinforces whatever the owner of a community ends up thinking or aligning with, whenever they ego trip, downvoting, shadow banning, or shutting down anyone who goes out of line? Then, as a side effect, users just end up posting what they know others will like, so it gets promoted, leading it to become an echo chamber hug box of people patting each other on the back and agreeing with each other, which brings with it a feeling of emptiness, of homogeneity, and fake kindness. This is like that, but it's one guy essentially controlling the entire website, making it his machine of interest. Honestly, thinking about it, instead of Doom, playing Fortnite in the current year is a great unintentional metaphor for Twitter in the current year. When you enter into a normal Fortnite match in the normal mode, you have no idea who is real and who is a bot, and you have to judge based on their behavior style. That's essentially every post now. Logging into Twitter went from the agony of being in hell fighting demons in Doom to playing an empty match of Fortnite. When you finish a book, when you finish a movie, when you have sex and finish, when you cry, when you finish a shift at work, there is a catharsis of being through with an activity, good or bad, of reaching an end. Almost everything has a definitive end that has a sense of finality, and even in rare cases, like a bad flaky breakup, will, with time, become just a faded chapter of your life that feels final. Finality brings catharsis. Social media does not have said catharsis because social media does not have said finality. It's never ending, it's ever changing, and it's purposely designed not to have that feeling of catharsis. It is designed to be like a potato chip packet, not just being addictive, but unfulfilling while being addictive, ever present, always available, always feeling like you haven't had enough. Social media sells the idea of getting some grand emotion, validation, connection, enlightenment, a deeper understanding, but the experience is mostly passive, quick, and disposable. I thought I'd have catharsis spending a year of my life writing to the finest detail I could my adolescent observation of what this has done to my generation, but I'm making this, so obviously I didn't. What became apparent as the months dragged on since speaking about it is that unlike everything I've ever written about, I can never truly write about the internet in a way that's lasting, while the effects the internet has on me is lasting. There is so much that happens all the time that you have to be overly generic or hyper-specific to make it feel like it covers the topic. This frustration generally is why I made the video. Internet analysis is probably the most needed form of commentary and will be for the next 50 years, but it always feels fragmented and ultimately always forgettable, disposable, and evanescent as much as the content it's usually commenting on. I wanted to make a lasting video, the video I always wished was made, the catharsis I never got from what I saw and experienced, and it didn't work. I was trying to make a video of permanence on a platform that resists permanence by design. You likely see my issue. Instead, it's become more like a period piece of what it was like just before AI really hit, and now serves as a kind of retrospective on Gen Z childhood, where at the end I accurately predict what is currently happening now. Good, but not at all what I really wanted, which was finality and permanence, and the clarity of having done that, never needing to really add more to it. It's become apparent that no matter how good my writing or ideas are, and no matter how much time I put into thinking about it, the internet evolves so rapidly that we're being psychologically exploited faster than we can comprehend the changes exploiting us, let alone write about it. I've had countless different observations I've recorded since that release that could have been and could be their own video. For example, once bipartisan companies shifting ideologically when it suits them, changing not only attitude but platform guidelines and policy, thus having a domino effect on content produced. How Meta soft-launched AI without telling the public, ran for the hills when they got outcry from people noticing and had to cancel their plans. But not really cancelling their plans, just making it not as noticeable. Companies like Leet literally creating AI influencers because, quote, in a world oversaturated with influencers who are either too commercial or too impersonal, Leet introduces diverse AI-driven entities that engage users in entirely new, dynamic ways. Yes, you heard that right. To fight against impersonal creators, they are creating AI influencers. No one speaks genuinely anymore and almost seems inhuman, and their solution is to make it literally inhuman. Or how about Mr. Beast changing his content from being him doing challenges to masses of people doing challenges, to have so much broad appeal to the point you don't need to know who Mr. Beast is. You don't need any context to view this. The creator, platform, and personality is completely irrelevant, with the only emphasis being the content you are consuming. The people in the video are as brand safe as possible, watered down to the most basic human reactions anytime something in the video happens, making it more impersonal than pretty much any TV program I've ever seen, even the most fluffiest reality TV. And I'm sure there will be changes after this video. Making lasting internet analysis is a fool's dream I can never actually accomplish. You can only analyze what is, what was, and predict what will be, not what will always be, because there's practically no axioms in this place. There is no certainty, there is no finality, you will never have catharsis, and no one speaks about this issue. It's not just that our attention spans are being ruined. It's that our discussions are subsequently being ruined because of our short attention spans. This isn't something that can be covered in a 20-minute summarization. This needs a long-lasting, ongoing conversation of multiple different mediums the entire populace should be having. But it won't happen. Discussions on the 24/7 news cycle itself and what it's doing to us will never be as profitable as the 24/7 news cycle. Discussions about the algorithm will never be as popular as content that caters to the algorithm. The academia can never catch up to how fast the culture is changing. By the time they have written a paper on current culture, it's outdated. And most importantly, creating commentary about the internet on the internet is like trying to paint on quicksand. The medium itself undermines the permanence and depth you're striving for. The topics are fleeting, the people are fleeting, my patience is fleeting, but the impact this is having on the viewer watching all of this fleeting content is not. The psychological changes that's happening in our populace day by day, the generation that's being raised in this environment that will never know the world before, the constant need to learn whatever's happening, the restlessness of people unable to sit with a thought for more than a minute, which leads to drowning yourself in never-ending commentary to the commentary of the reaction to the thing that just happened, learning about events to summarize them, not to learn from them. We are being led by an algorithm that is actively exploiting every part of who we are to an exact science, and our children is going to grow up thinking this is what reality is, and you'll still be met with the same argument that's been perpetuated since this began. I've had to rewrite this video 3 times, not knowing the right angle to approach it from, and I think the best approach is to get very real and rant blazingly and abrasively. On most social medias, barring YouTube, I don't know how much of what I see is AI, Russian bots, or real people. This is not a conspiracy theory anymore, this is our lived reality. You're schizo for not feeling schizo because you would be stupid to not ask yourself in any online engagement whether the person is real or not. And in so many instances, it's blurring the lines and you can't tell anymore. Blindly accepting every person as real isn't just ignorant, it will make you a pawn to people who will propagandize you without you knowing. Outrage bait, purposely evocative conversations, emotionally manipulative media. Trolling used to be for fun and for the love of it, now it's just for maximizing engagement and spreading reach. The internet has become like fast food, but it's in everyone's diet and there's little choice for any other food chain, and you'll see people defend it as it makes them sicker and sicker. Everyone knows this is bad for us, but we're so attached it kind of doesn't matter anymore. It's not that the lobster denies being boiled in a pot that's killing it. It's not just that. It's that he begins justifying his own burning as it kills him, and right as he's realizing the effects, right as he finally takes the threat seriously, he tries to claw his way out, but it doesn't work. Because the whole point of the pot was to lull him into a complacency that entrenches him into accepting his own suffering and situation until he just adapts to it, until it literally kills him and he can't adapt to it anymore. Until it kills him, he is perfectly complacent with the situation that is killing him. I need to rant about something I've been grappling with my entire existence, which is that widely, the culture I grew up in never, ever predicts problems or tries to repeal them before dealing with their aftermath, dealing with them only afterwards, never before. The internet and culture at large so rarely and so brazenly ever stops before it's too late or thinks about the consequences of what it's doing. Maybe it was a bad idea to let strangers who cultivate child audiences interact with that said child audience in private messages and have them encourage that. Maybe that was a terrible idea. Maybe it was a bad idea to begin talking about politics on websites and applications that, while not necessarily restricting free speech, restrict restrict the amount you can speak in a post, making it cater to our worst instincts of tribalism, anger, fear, and sensationalism. In the funniest fashion, YouTube, Twitter, and all the other centralized social media banning hate speech in the 2010s then led to the rise of dog whistling, which was like crack to an already irony-poisoned generation. And whereas before you could refute and argue, you can't win an argument with someone who doesn't care, as they can always fall back on they're just joking. It's like trying to punch fog, there's no substance to hold on to, let alone argue against. They don't take their arguments seriously, so neither should you. So you don't care because they don't care, leading to a culture that doesn't care, which would be fine if it wasn't hijacking our neurochemistry, propagandizing children before they've had any life experience, and wasn't undeniably the future of where we are going. Repetitive soapbox, I'm right, the culture at large is wrong monologue aside, nobody takes a problem seriously until dealing with the fallout and the consequences. We are a culture of reaction, not planning ahead, and it was taught and cultivated by the system that perpetuates it. I know it will not always be like this, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but I don't know how long the tunnel is, and I don't know when we're going to reach the light. The entire reason we got here is because we didn't take it seriously, and now our attention spans are fucked, we don't have meaningful dialogue, misinformation and fake news is everywhere, everyone, myself included, is in their own algorithmic echo chamber, people don't know how to treat each other, we are embaked with irony to the point where I know some of you watching don't know how to properly express that you love someone when you do. The moment we should have taken this seriously before all of this happened was the moment we didn't, and we are still in this perpetually weird lukewarm state. We know and recognize that this is bad for us, but we're still not taking it seriously. It's in the language, it's in the attitude. We are still treating it as if the information you're constantly processing every day isn't having an effect on you ideologically or your view of the world. This is not a drama video, I don't know what category this falls under, but this is a serious inquiry into the state of information and how we proceed from this point. It is the information age. It is an information war. Everyone but the people who control and funnel information is losing. When you go out and buy a book, you go out and watch a movie, it's a deliberate action. You, the consumer, have a choice in what you're doing, what you watch, and what you do with your time. It's not really your choice for what you see when you log on to social media. You can block people, you can like things, and the algorithm will cater to that, but really, it will be whatever gets you staying on the app the longest. It will appeal to the worst sides of yourself. It will make you an indifferent, passive consumer of your own life. So is it really too surprising that a culture that celebrates and rewards an algorithm that chooses what you watch becomes as lazy and mindless as that which feeds it? The culture is passive, complacent, and adaptive. Horrible world events become talking points that the public just loses interest in, like it's a TV show because we treat it as one. Events that once would have sparked widespread societal change are now consumed as a fleeting moment, a talking point. It's not even obedience or submission, it's just apathetic compliance. We have no time to unpack what happened last year, let alone what happened today, so a lot of people are carrying around trauma, letting it build up from things they moved on from way too fast. We are burnt out, exploited neurochemically, addicted to anything that makes us emotional, tragedy especially, because at least it makes you feel something real, until it doesn't and you'll just move on. Now, all of this, and this all, has to do with demoralization. In 2024, as mentioned, I talked about over-socialization. If you're a fan of mine, you've heard this song and dance a million times and are likely bored of it. I'm bored too, mainly because it's an agreeable, likable, plain video that has a cool aesthetic that I articulated well and made so that no one would really have an issue with. I slaved over it for a year and polished it until I knew it was going to be something people would have a hard time disagreeing with. People praised me for it, it was fun, I liked it. This is my controversial side game that the fandom is split on but the creator has a soft spot for. This time I'm focusing on the culture itself, the creators and you, the viewers. This time I've set my sights on demoralization. Now, what is demoralization? Well, it's spicy, I'll give you that. Demoralization is a type of psychological warfare that is designed to make you not care and lose confidence with your belief system, until you don't know what you believe and are left disorientated and/or apathetic, effectively neutralizing your ability to resist or act as your enemy takes advantage of your state. You know things are wrong, you know this isn't how it should be, but you don't know what's right, you don't know what to believe, and you can't change anything at a systematic level. As you don't know what's true, you're scared to act out, so you don't say or do anything. Buckle your fuckles and fuckle your buckles, I'm going deep with this one. Propaganda convinces you of a false reality for the purpose of selling an item, idea, or ideology. Demoralization makes you not care about reality, breaking you through repetition until truth doesn't matter because you can't discern it for yourself. It is a type of warfare. Warfare is commonly thought to be just raw combat battles and events, starting and stopping pissing contests of certain empires and countries, squabbling lasting only a few years. While not completely wrong, it misses out on other, more nefarious and in the current landscape, more pressing forms of conflict. Especially since the Cold War, it's not really been the physical immediacy of gunfire, bayonets that has dominated countries' forms of attack. The looming shadow of mutually assured destruction at the hands of nuclear weapons has led the superpowers to fight in a very different arena with a new arsenal of tricks up their sleeve. Warfare has become less about landmarks and territory and instead shifted to a battleground of the mind, the information, and the process of turning everyday citizens of a foreign nation into unknowing ideological soldiers. Let's say you're a foreign country in a state of psychological warfare. There are many different tools at your disposal. You could bolster and hire journalists and media articles to only promote positive stories and censor or cover up negative stories of your home country or government. You could leverage population data of an enemy country, identifying and targeting specific demographics most susceptible to influence or propaganda, and make them start infighting, amplifying social fragmentation. But none I've seen as efficient as demoralization. Overwhelming the enemy emotionally, mentally, or spiritually with information until they don't know what the truth is. Propaganda for or against you doesn't matter because the populace will be so overwhelmed with propaganda, they will eat themselves alive. Surrounded by paranoia and crisis, they will align with you, their enemy, out of spite their fellow citizen, now turned true opposition. To avoid the flagrant divisiveness, individuals of your enemy country would then retreat into echo chambers or align with extreme ideologies, further polarizing society. Citizens become distrustful of institutions, media, and most importantly, each other. You, the enemy or foreign actor, becomes less of a threat compared to internal rivals or perceived opposition. This then frames the foreign entity, you, as a preferable alternative to the chaos at home. Slowly, tyranny, authoritarianism, or external control would be seen as a means of stability and relief from internal strife. You completely won, ideologically conquering your enemy without firing a single bullet, because why waste the actual ammo when your best ammo is your enemy's own mouth? Demoralization as a concept was popularized by an ex-KGB agent in the 80s, Yuri Bezmenov. Bezmenov defected from the KGB, which you could think of as the Soviet Union's equivalent to the CIA. And he gave lectures on the KGB's means of destroying America from the inside, with demoralization being one of the methods being used.
What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. Ideological subversion is the slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom.
Obviously, Bezmenov was talking about a Marxist-Leninist Soviet Union that no longer exists. But while the USSR and KGB have disbanded, the methods they've used have only been used more in the information age by almost every superpower. Just as people imagine the blanket term of warfare as raw combat battles and events, people often imagine psychological warfare, espionage, spies, manipulation, and disinformation the same way, with just more of a Hollywood mysticism from action movies and media like it. The effect this has on a personal level is equivalent to your entire life being an endless shower argument inside your head you're afraid to actually do or enact because you know it will grant no positives and will only make you a target. So you live your life bitter, feeling a bit empty inside because it is the advantageous position to not have a position. The purpose is not to convince your enemy, it's to make them lose faith in their own argument, subvert them until they're supporting something they otherwise wouldn't, and confuse them until they don't know what's real, what to support, what to fight against, or how to fight against it. This tactic is used in a variety of fields beyond just politics. Hypothetically, you could, as a public figure, do something horrible, be called out on it, and then spend the next few months paying bot accounts, paying highly prominent social media accounts to spread positive propaganda about you, making the event become irrelevant or a done deal in the public subconscious, manufactured consensus. And vice versa, you could ruin someone's life or reputation very easily by subtly spreading negative propaganda about them through an influx of bot accounts flooding their posts, accounts, or making posts about them, turning the tide of onlookers to make it seem like it's a swath of people they have against them, when really it's all just bots. Even if someone is critical or skeptical, the sheer volume of the narrative can create doubt or overwhelm counterarguments. They are random accounts who will flood posts. They aren't real, they aren't well thought out, but the overwhelming number of them will push and pull public consciousness. We are social creatures. As much as you may think you're an individualist thinker, we tend to follow the perceived majority opinion, or at least change our behavior depending on it. If 70 people in a room all were loudly agreeing with each other, would you loudly disagree with those 70 and be brave? Is that even bravery if you know you can't change their mind? Aren't you just making yourself a target needlessly? This calculation keeps many people silent. The fear of judgment and expectation of futility of even risking that judgment keeps people from speaking out against things they know are unjust or wrong. When people are uncertain about what's true against large groups of people, they either shut down or become too passive to resist the dominant narrative. Thus, who controls information in the information age controls reality. As we are being socialized through media, who controls media controls us, our way of perceiving, our way of communicating, our way of knowing what truth is. And if you flood them with so much information, they won't care what the truth is. They can't focus. They will move on. They are demoralized. This entire fucking argument existing, especially right now, is a testament to demoralization. We went from go outside and ignore the problem to you should stop caring about the problem, because you can't ignore it anymore, no matter where you go. Apathy isn't an escape, it's surrender. We can't keep running from this and doing band-aid solutions to the gaping wound that is our media platforms and the dead internet that has very real and alive effects. The bots aren't real, the effect it has on the user are very real. When I say the internet is dead, I do mean the disconnected feeling and the language of creators becoming hollow and the users being overrun by bots, but also, it is literally dying off. Websites are being replaced or no longer being accessible. Slowly, one by one, websites that used to be incredibly popular before the central social media sites were prominent are shutting down, have been lost to time, or are unusable now. GeoCities, Friendster, Vine, so many different Flash websites and Flash games, and countless personal websites, government sites, old company sites. A Pew Research Center analysis of a random selection of URLs found that roughly 38% of all websites from 2013 to October 2023 are gone. A quarter of the pages that were online at some point over that period have now vanished. Moving beyond the statistic, I've talked about it before, but the internet doesn't even really feel like its previous self in terms of variety either. We as users are using the internet more than ever, but it's just the same few websites. In the 90s and the 2000s, there were hundreds of decently sized user-operated sites that were well known and a few even more popular, which were all user-focused. MySpace and LiveJournal, so many different blogs. Hell, even early YouTube had much more options in a creator's expression. I know I'm repeating myself, but compare the old UI to the new one. One has so much more personality available, you really get a reading for their kind of style as a creator. The new one, while well streamlined for ease of access, has nothing distinct about itself. My channel customization really isn't that different from someone else's, and vice versa. Customizing my fucking mathletics in middle school has more expression than these apps designed for expression. And compare how scrolling through these really early social media websites was a wall of people you actually knew, people you were actually following, people you were actually interested in, updates from people you deliberately chose to follow. I would say most of my feed in every single website, forum, or app for the past 3 years has been 10% people I actually actively follow, and 90% recommendations I'm usually not interested in. And I don't mind if it's YouTube, which is entertainment and always was a website about discovering new people, which I'm down for. But why the hell should Facebook, a website made to connect with friends and keep up with relatives, adopt an algorithm feed of strangers I don't know? That's like if Vine became the place to watch documentaries. It's completely opposite to what its original purpose was. Has this website completely lost its identity to become become homogenous with everything else, just another content aggregation platform, indistinguishable from many others. Why yes, it has, and you see this everywhere. From logos simplifying themselves to the point they look like basic colors, to every brand adopting the same personality of Wendy's tweets trying to appear relatable, everything feels similar. From apps to websites to creators to logo brands to NFT profile pictures to mindsets to crimes, because everyone popular really did decide to follow in the steps of Hollywood, not just in content but in practice, because there's so many goddamn sexual predators. Everyone's doing a cover band of cover bands and everything's the same, and it shouldn't be. There was genuinely a time when I was younger where I would constantly find cool, interesting websites that were distinct from each other with cool, interesting people that were distinct from each other. Case in point, every single app that's become these centralized popular sites were once distinct from each other. I remember when Snapchat was the only one that had stories and was this place that highlighted impermanence and was really the only one that had impermanence. Instagram was all about the aesthetic and the pleasant to look at photos. Twitter was microblogging and brief updates. Facebook was the place to connect with relatives, old classmates, and friends, kind of like a viewable digital scrapbook. They all lived in the social media ecosystem with distinct microcultures and identities and purposes, offering a wide spectrum of distinct and creatively diverse creations you could watch or engage with. This changed. Facebook in the 2010s was one of the first of the centralized apps and websites to have an infinite scroll where you didn't have to click load more. It would allow you to endlessly swipe through content without clicking. Then Twitter implemented it, Instagram started with it, and all of them from then on began copying each other for similar tactics of user retention. Instagram took the idea of stories from Snapchat, and from that point, they all began bleeding together in user experience and content. And I remember seeing TikTok blow up, wearing the mask of Vine, and it for a year or two was fulfilling the same sort of niche. Small slapstick comedy and dancing, but it wanted a bigger stake in the market, covering more ground, so it added in talking and became another platform for identity and a place you could grow an audience, and a place that was Twitter's limited speech in video form. And as the apps became indistinguishable from each other, creators of these apps became indistinguishable from each other, slowly transforming into mass appeal not just to the audiences but to the platforms. You don't just make a YouTube video now, you make a YouTube video that can be repackaged into 3 different shorts or TikToks, or re-uploaded to Snapchat, or posted to Twitter, because there's almost no difference between any of the apps anymore, which dilutes the user's wider experience of being on the internet. Imagine entering into 3 separate cities and they all have the same architecture, the same culture, and you keep seeing the same people. Imagine going into 3 different restaurants and they all have the same menu, served by the same waiter. The chef's different, but the food tastes the same. You probably get sick of the food, right? You want more in your diet, or at least a variety. But everywhere you look, everyone's serving the same thing, with the same methods, giving the same taste. That's the experience of browsing 3 different social media apps in the current day. It's eating way too much of the same food. It's going down the street to get some food, but everything is turned into a knockoff McDonald's. It's a competitive market of blandness that disregards and disrespects why these all became popular in the first place, which was how they stood out in the market, their niche, their distinctness, which made them garner an audience. They are diluting their original identities to become indistinguishable from each other in creativity and choice, where everyone speaks the same, where everyone acts the same, where every app is trying to be the same, and the result is a culture of stagnation from industry to industry where variety is limited, and everything is trying to be whatever can appeal to the most amount of people, sacrificing identity, uniqueness, and the potential for growth. And I know, this isn't completely new. I would be out of my mind to insinuate it is. There was the time of the Western in cinema. There was the time of the military shooter in gaming. There was the time on YouTube where everyone wanted to be a vlogger or a Let's Player. But all of them feel different than this new era, I swear. It's like we're trying to optimize optimization itself. Every genre, every industry, everyone behind the scenes speaking like a Californian CEO about uploading their art in this grey sludge umbrella term of content, because they view their art as impersonal as what they describe it with. Of course, there are, in every industry, smaller and more independent creators that are still producing interesting, innovative, and truly impassioned projects. There always will be, no matter what cultural trends are in place. But these aren't the things that dominate most of our discussions, these aren't what most of us are seeing, and these aren't the things widely raising the next generation. It's a culture that doesn't really seem to be led by the people or for the people, instead by algorithms, bots, and people who cater to algorithms and bots. When people talk about the dead internet theory itself, it discourages me from wanting to be associated with talking about it, because it's one of those things that on paper most everyone would probably agree with, but people needlessly over-dramatize the concept, not the impact, when the concept is so understandable and agreeable, leading it to seemingly be like an unbelievable conspiracy when it really isn't. And leaving out the impact, which actually needs to be highlighted and made with gravitas, to contrast how different this has become so quickly from what it used to be, and how it's affecting users' day-to-day experience and the future of information. It was not like this. I know what it should be like. I experienced what it was like. I remember when it was still something people were really excited about, feeling like you were a part of something novel and new. The new century, the new culture, with its own weird language. Communities were forming organically, the creative energy was infectious, it was so unlike traditional media. I remember flash games and experimental websites and early animation. Some of my first memories of being alive is playing on websites like that. I remember when it was widely optimistic, kind of sincere and corny but in a likable way. Just so much more refreshing than the contemporary realistic hopeless feeling of what these companies have done to us. The quickly missed potential, the unalive feeling, and the kind of boring apathy that is just how it is now. Contrary to what my repeated writings on the negatives of the internet may make you believe, I don't like complaining about this. I don't want it to be like this. I don't want to overly romanticize how good it was, because it could have been so much more. I shouldn't be grateful for the time I had with it when I did. It's not a pet dying, it's a form of communication. It was supposed to be the form of communication. I think it's symbolic that the product that so many of us use on a daily basis, the one so many of you are probably watching this on, the company that changed everything, its logo is an apple that's been bitten out of. I have no idea if Steve Jobs or his team intended it to be a biblical reference, but it does, in retrospect, feel like the perfect metaphor for everything that's happened. The fruit that shouldn't have ever been eaten, the knowledge we shouldn't have ever touched, and the snake that beckoned us towards sin. Sometimes I listen to speakers from before the internet became what it is today, who spoke about the potential of what this could be, what it could have been, the fears, the exhilarations, the utopian visions, and I think everyone should. It's nice to think of what if rather than what is, because the funny thing about death is that it almost always leads to some form of rebirth. So that's the current year and climate of the internet. I left out a few things and a few platforms, mainly because I just end up repeating myself, and I don't want to speak about what I don't know. I've never really used Facebook as much as others, so I didn't feel like the right person to speak on it more fully. But from what I've heard from the people in my life, the bot problem is almost as bad there as it is on Twitter. And obviously, your experience probably differs from mine. Maybe you haven't seen AI much, maybe you've seen even more of it. But regardless, if you've made it this far into the video, I would be willing to bet you're probably like me in the sense that you have felt the same disconnect. You've probably noticed that no one is really speaking how they would in real life online. You've probably noticed how repetitive everyday media has become. So the question we are left with is, where do we go from here? Now I could end this video with a soapy, sappy ending where I say all hope is not lost, and say that creativity and the human spirit always finds a way. Which is exactly what I'm gonna do, because all hope is not lost and creativity always finds a way. Good art wakes you up from the sludge and monotony of, well, I guess that was alright, that is so much of entertainment and creativity. Just safe bets and return investments for people that don't give a fuck about giving a fuck. They aren't even fun to hate. They aren't cartoonishly evil, nor people who are actually trying but failing to make something impactful. They are indifferent. Hating them is indifferent. Watching all of their work is indifferent. So indifferent that you don't want to waste more time than you did watching it to think afterwards about it. But it's so pervasive that you end up thinking about it, because this is what art and culture has become at this point. Indifferent recycling of the same talking points, the same stories, the same reactions, indifferent complacence. It's jerking off to something and not feeling the shame afterwards. It's the underpaid, bored, and passively frustrated McDonald's worker spitting in your food just for a chance to rebel in some small, even insignificant way, and not really caring at this point if they get fired. Having something wake you up from that indifference, having something actually remind you to care, having something actually impact you on a way that sticks with you, that is the way to combat deadness. Watch stuff that makes you want to create, watch stuff that actually makes you want to live. Because the internet may be dead, but so God help me, this cemetery can have some flowers bloom. The internet may be dead, but the users are not. The impact we can have on the internet is null and void. The impact we can have on each other has never been more important. The internet is dead, we are alive. I've never been more inspired to create than in knowing it's entirely replaceable. I've never been more motivated to live my life than in the face of it becoming entirely irrelevant. Maybe it's because I'm a stubborn bastard, which I am, but also maybe it's because in the face of things that crush our spirit, I find it only makes it more plainly obvious how strong and resilient our spirit is. Being surrounded by dead things while trying to live, being aware that we're entirely replaceable, isn't that just Earth in the Milky Way? Isn't that just being alive in general? Aren't we all just a lived visual metaphor of that little bit of grass that grows out of the cracks in the concrete? I hate to go all philosophy mumbo jumbo, but I'll do so. There's a very wise quote from Epictetus that perfectly describes the widespread issue we're facing. Most of what passes for legitimate entertainment is inferior or foolish and only caters to or exploits people's weaknesses. Avoid being one of the mob who indulges in such pastimes. Your life is too short and you have important things to do. Be discriminating about what images and ideas you permit into your mind. If you yourself don't choose what thoughts and images you expose yourself to, someone else will, and their motives may not be the highest. It is the easiest thing in the world to slide imperceptibility into vulgarity. But there's no need for that to happen if you determine not to waste your time and attention on mindless pap. It's your life, do whatever you want, but do consider it. Consider what you're watching. Consider whether you're watching is actually beneficial. You wouldn't settle for bad food at a restaurant, so why settle for below average entertainment or a mediocre intellectual diet? Okay, now back to the sleep-deprived speech of inspiration. I ask you sincerely, unsubscribe from creators and things that you know you don't really like or feel impacted by watching. And so be it, if you sit through my videos and don't feel impacted, then I've failed at my job and you should unsubscribe from me. Genuinely. We should all clear our intellectual and spiritual diet until we actually feel fucking fulfilled for once. You owe it to yourself. Never be complacent with mediocrity. Watch shit that genuinely makes you laugh. Watch shit that genuinely makes you cry. Watch shit that genuinely makes you feel alive. That is the way of spiritual combat in the war of information and your time. That is the way to truly combat deadness, whether it be apathy or the unalive state of the inhabitants that surround us. Never be demoralized. You owe it to yourself to only view the highest of creation. And as for your fellow man, you owe it to them to make the highest bar of creation possible. This whole channel so far has been talking about the death of spirit in young people and how I genuinely view it as a modern day tragedy because the spirit isn't dead at all, it's just being indefinitely suffocated. I talked about the over-socialization aspect from Gen Z childhood and social media. Then I talked about the potential of the human spirit being broken by going so far off the boat we might not be human anymore. Then I talked about self-limiting beliefs and being a coward at your own potential. And really this one is about treating yourself to a higher bar of creation and not letting things that are not alive, literally or in passion, drag down your spirit. This video is likely going to be demonetized due to copyright and my vulgar language. I don't give a fuck, I do this shit for free. If on a viewer level you need to watch that which makes you feel alive, on a creator level you need to be, for lack of a better word, radically human. I'm not selling out for a second! Please join my Discord, I'm trying to build a community, and also turn on the bell notification. A lot of people haven't been getting notified. I thought YouTubers were lying about that, but nah, it's real. As long as my friends can send me incomprehensible Instagram reels at 3 AM, as long as there's cap videos, as long as there's Family Guy funny moments part 335, the walls may be dead, but this party is alive. And if you can't see that, maybe it's not the internet that's dead on the inside, maybe it's you.